said that the DIA report was low confidence intel. Can you share what other assessments are currently underway to get to the bottom of just how effective these strikes were?
Yes, well, I can assure you what the CIA director said, that when we look at the entirety of the intelligence that we have to this date, it concludes that these strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities were absolutely successful. It was a total obliteration, as the president said, and not only does our own intelligence say that, but also the Iranian foreign minister has said that. We saw Israel conclude the same thing based on their own intelligence. We also had the United Nations say that as well. So I think the only other time the United Nations, Israel, Iran, and the United States has agreed on something is that the sky is blue, but they all agree that Iran's nuclear facilities were completely demolished. And I would just like to reemphasize, you mentioned this was a low confidence preliminary intelligence assessment, and the entirety of that assessment was not leaked to the media. Only tidbits of that assessment were leaked to CNN. And we have seen this playbook run before, where you have people in the intelligence community, or perhaps on Capitol Hill, we don't know, but I believe the FBI is investigating to find out who that leaker was, because it's illegal and they should be held accountable for that, leaked bits and pieces of an intel assessment to push a false narrative. And it's to the same reporter, I will add, Natasha Bertrand of CNN, who has done this in the past. In 2020, it was Natasha Bertrand who had 51 intelligence analysts falsely lie to her, but she still put it on paper for some reason, that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. We all know that's not true, right? We can all agree on that now. That was a lie from the intelligence community. Also in 2020, this same reporter, Natasha Bertrand, wrote that a top intel agency ruled out the man-made lab leak theory of the coronavirus origins. Again, the president was right about that. This reporter wrote a lie from the intelligence community to seek a narrative she wanted to prove, and guess what? We now know that's the truth. Also, in 2024, Bertrand pushed the suckers and losers hoax. She also pushed the fine people hoax, which was taking the president's words purposely out of context. And then last October, and I believe this is notable, Natasha Bertrand published an article in Politico from the intelligence agency. She said that John Ratcliffe was speaking without any evidence when he said Iran was attempting to undermine President Trump's presidential campaign. And then we, of course, found out that was absolutely true. In fact, the Biden administration declassed an intel report which said they had high confidence that Iran had done exactly what Ratcliffe alleged. They did run an influence campaign to hurt President Trump's candidacy. In fact, we know the Iranians tried to take President Trump's life. And so this is a reporter who has been unfortunately used by people who dislike Donald Trump in this government to push fake and false narratives. She should be ashamed of herself. And that's not what reporting is. Journalism is trying to find the facts and the truth. And this week we saw this same reporter being used to push a fake narrative to try to undermine the President of the United States, and more importantly, the brave fighter pilots who conducted one of the most successful operations in United States history. And I think the American people fully know that this operation was a complete and total success. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Karoline. The Miami Herald recently published a story saying the Trump administration was targeting migrant foster children. The Trump administration has denounced this as false. Could you clarify the Trump administration's position on protecting migrant children, particularly the 300,000 lost under the Biden administration?
Yes, I saw that Miami Herald article yesterday, and I was aghast at the headline. It's egregious to accuse this administration of trying to target foster children. That is not at all what is happening at the Department of Homeland Security. And I learned that the Department of Homeland Security actually tried to work in good faith with this reporter to get this story right, to explain that this administration is trying to protect foster children. We are trying to keep children out of harm's way, even if that means their parents are not law-abiding citizens. We want to protect children, unlike the previous administration, which allowed children to be trafficked and raped, and in some cases killed because of the open border policies. Unfortunately, the Miami Herald just completely degraded themselves with this report, despite having a full list of facts from the Department of Homeland Security. It's another example of fake news. And the May border numbers speak for themselves. Not a single illegal alien was allowed into this country because of this administration's border policies in the month of May. That means not a single child was allowed into this country, possibly with human smugglers or human traffickers. And we know that was happening at the rate of thousands and thousands of children every single month. in the previous administration for 4 years. And you didn't see any reporting of that from the Miami Herald, but now they're trying to accuse this administration. And we tried to give them the facts, and they refused to report them. So thank you for bringing that report to light. Aisha.
Good to see you again.
You too.
I know you're looking for
You're
this.
usually on the Hill.
I know, I'm here today. I know you're looking for this leaker. Is it your belief, I know you said earlier you're not sure if it's on Capitol Hill or at the Pentagon, but is it your belief that it might be in Capitol Hill? And how confident are you that you'll find this leaker?
Well, I'm not personally looking for the leaker. The FBI is looking for the leaker, so you'll have to ask them in the Department of Justice in terms of this investigation. But leaking top secret classified intelligence is a crime, and people need to be held accountable for that crime.
Can I just ask you about how you're going to be limiting intel to Congress? What would you say to lawmakers who say they have oversight privileges, they need this information?
This administration wants to ensure that classified intelligence is not ending up in irresponsible hands, and that people who have the privilege of viewing this top secret classified information are being responsible with it. And unfortunately, clearly, someone who had their hands on this, and it was a very few people, few number of people in our government who saw this report, that person was irresponsible with it, and we need to get to the bottom of it, and we need to strengthen that process to protect our national security and protect the American public. Mary Margaret, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
You just laid out a lot of different stories about disinformation that Natasha, excuse me, that Natasha Bertrand had pushed during her time at Politico and at CNN. Why would any member of the Trump administration leak anything to her?
Well, again, as I just said, we're investigating who that leaker was. It could have been someone in the intelligence community, or it could have been someone on Capitol Hill who had access to this document. The FBI is searching for that person. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. The president was
And
obviously...
clearly it was done to undermine the president, to answer your question.
And I'm sorry, I really wanted to follow up on that really quickly. Before the strikes on Iran, we saw a number of other leaks about Tulsi Gabbard, the Vice President Vance. Is there an effort to divide the president's team when it comes to these leaks and which reporters they choose?
I do believe there's an effort on the outside of this building to try to divide the president's team on the inside, and sometimes you have to look at these headlines and laugh, because I've been in meetings where I know these things are absolutely not true, and again, we do our best here, I believe, to try to push back and correct the record with all of you, but there is fake reporting. That's just the reality of this country, unfortunately, but I can assure you the president's team is strong, especially the national security team. Everyone is very proud of the president, of our commander-in-chief, and of our military for the successful operation that took place on Saturday night.
Thanks, Caroline. The President was obviously very pleased with getting his NATO allies to increase defence spending. He's made the same demands of Asia-Pacific allies of the United States, including Australia, where I'm from. How does the NATO result impact negotiations with Asia-Pacific allies? Does it, for say, strengthen the President's resolve to say, well, our NATO allies have done it, now you need to do it too?
Yeah, I mean, look, if our allies in Europe and our NATO allies can do it, I think our allies and our friends in the Asia-Pacific region can do it as well. But as for our specific relations in those discussions, I'll let the president speak on those.
And can I just ask as well, when he had to leave the G7 early, he missed out on a number of bilateral meetings that were scheduled with other world leaders, including the Prime Minister of Australia. Obviously, President Zelensky, he's managed to meet since then, but are there plans afoot to make up for those meetings with the world leaders that he missed out on?
Yeah, I think many of those world leaders understood the situation happening in the Middle East and the urgency and the need for the president to get back to Washington to monitor that situation. And obviously that was the right call, considering the success of not only the operation on Saturday night, but also the ceasefire that the president has since brokered on behalf of not just our country, but the entire world, frankly. But he has made up a couple of those meetings, and he has had direct phone calls with some of those leaders he was supposed to meet with as well. Not all. Ed.
Oh yeah, thanks, Caroline. So to clarify on trade, so what happens to the countries other than China on July 9th?
That's a decision for the president to make, and I will let him make it.
Okay, and secondly, so now that oil is just about upper $60s a barrel, when's the administration going to start refilling the Strategic Petroleum Reserve?
That's, again, a decision for the president to make and our Secretary of Energy. There's no imminent plans to do that, from what I understand. But as you have seen with the plummeting of oil prices in this country, it's because this president and our Department of Energy have really tapped into our resources here, and we have an increased increase of supply, unlike the previous administration that totally hampered our domestic energy efforts, but totally robbed and drained our strategic petroleum reserves. So when the time is right, the president will make that decision. But right now, we are utilizing the resources that God blessed us with right here in our country to produce energy for our people.
Yeah, one more if I could. On the One Big Beautiful Bill, does the president believe the parliamentarian of the Senate should be removed?
I haven't spoken to him about that, and I'll let him speak on it. However, again, he knows this is part of the process and the inner workings of the Senate, and he wants to see this bill done, and he remains very much engaged in these conversations and in this process with lawmakers in both the Senate and the House side, and the whole White House does as well. In the back. Yes, Libby.
Thank you, Caroline. Earlier today, the president stated that these photos out of Fordo that were showing nuclear materials being removed, suspected of showing that, were just concrete workers. What intelligence is that based upon?
Look, the president shared that statement with all of you, and I already answered the question about whether uranium was moved prior to the strike, and the answer is no.
Is there a chance that the DIA report becomes public at any point?
I don't think this administration is going to get into the habit of sharing classified, top-secret information. Those classifications exist for a reason, and I wish everyone who had the privilege of looking at these documents would respect that. Daniel?
Thank you, Caroline. You've been emphatic that the president's expectations for the One Big Beautiful Bill to hit that July 4th deadline. You had a big meeting on Capitol Hill yesterday with the Republican Study Committee. Did you walk away from that meeting pleased with what you heard? Did it bolster your confidence that Congress is able to meet that the expectation of the president?
Yes, I did. The camaraderie at the Republican Study Committee was great. Members, expressed, their feelings about the bill, but as we saw, the bill passed through the House, despite many people believing it could not. So the House is ready to receive this bill back from the Senate so they can pass it and bring it to the president's desk. So it was a great meeting, and Republicans are very unified. And we also talked about the mayoral race in New York City and how the victory of the Democratic primary candidate really shows how far left and unhinged the Democrat Party has become. And Republicans truly are on the right side of every issue in this country. We are on the side of no men in women's sports, on the side of low taxes, secure borders. So that was the topic of discussion. And the unity was strong and the camaraderie was high. And I know everyone looks forward to being here at the White House for the bill signing next week. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. The Supreme Court ruled this morning that South Carolina is allowed to deem Planned Parenthood is not a qualified healthcare provider, and that will block it from receiving Medicaid funds. Does the White House have a statement on that ruling, and would the president support a standalone bill from Congress to defund Planned Parenthood at a federal level rather than letting each state determine it?
I'll let the president speak on that legislative priority, but as for the Supreme Court ruling, the president has always maintained that Americans should not be forced to violate their conscience and their religious liberty by having their tax dollars fund abortions, and we're glad the Supreme Court ruled on that side today, or yesterday.
Then on Iran, but on a domestic matter, in January, President Trump revoked security details for several former administrations, including Mike Pompeo, Mark Milley, and John Bolton. Given the heightened tensions with Iran right now, is he considering restoring those security details?
That's not under consideration right now. Fran.
If I could follow up on trade, and then I have a question about the bill as well. Are you saying at this point that there's no plans to extend that July 8th and July 9th deadline? I mean, especially with everything that's been going on from Iran to the tax bill on Capitol Hill, is that under consideration at all at this point?
Perhaps it could be extended, but that's a decision for the president to make.
And as far as the bill itself goes, since the president has been back, what has he been doing beyond the event that he's having later today to try and get wobbly senators on board? Is he making phone calls, twisting arms? Is he having some people over to the White House? Can you tell us more about that effort?
There have been meetings at the White House this week. I saw some senators rolling out of the Oval Office the other day, and the president remains on the phones talking to his friends in the Senate when necessary, and when they call, he picks up the phone. And I think that's why they greatly trust and respect his leadership. And we're having that big event later this afternoon at 4 o'clock. I would encourage you all to tune in. We're going to have some great everyday Americans who are in attendance. We'll have some tipped delivery. I think we're going to have a barber from the great state of Arkansas here in attendance. We're going to have some law enforcement officers, some Border Patrol agents, and Tom Homan will be speaking as well. So the point of this event is to show the American people how this bill works for them and how there are provisions in this bill that will change their lives.
Can you tell us which senators you saw rolling out of the Oval Office?
I'll let the president speak on that if he wish. I don't share details about his private meetings without his permission. Emily, go ahead.
Today, the Justice Department announced it was opening an investigation into employment discrimination at the University of California, alleging they had race and sex-based quotas. Federal law bars hiring somebody based on their race or sex, but do you also object to universities working harder to make sure they have a diverse group of candidates to consider? And do you expect more investigations like this from DOJ?
I have not seen that investigation from the Department of Justice, but I can certainly check in. What I can tell you, it's the position of this president that we want to restore a merit-based society and culture in the United States of America, where people are not hired nor are they promoted based on their color of their skin or their gender. The president wants people to be hired in the workforce because of their merit and their skill, and I think most Americans agree with that. I'll take one more. Carrie, because I promised you earlier.
So the Ayatollah Khomeini came out and said that Iran will, quote, never surrender to the U.S. That being said, what remains to do with the possible responses from Iranian proxies in the region and even in the U.S.?
Look, we saw the Ayatollah's video, and when you have a totalitarian regime, you have to save face. I think any common sense, open-minded person knows the truth about the precision strikes on Saturday night. They were wildly successful, and it's what led to the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran, which the president is very grateful for. And the United States of America remains prepared to defend our assets and our personnel in the region. And again, I would just emphasize the success of the strike that took place on Saturday night, and the world is a safer place because of it. Thanks, guys, for coming today, and you'll see the president at 4 o'clock. Thanks.